Personality is a trait. And this is not a shot at Baker Mayfield, but I said I liked Sam Darnold's humility and gratitude out of college a little more than Baker's cockiness. Yeah. I think personality is a trait. And Sam Darnold was on the show yesterday, and multiple times I asked him about situations that did not go his way. The New York Jets was a disaster. Got benched in Carolina. He was grateful, talked about his teammates, his great coaches. And then I asked him about Minnesota, where he was up for an MVP by about week 12, week 13, week 14, had a great year. And they moved off him because they didn't want to pay him as much as Seattle would, and they were going to go with J.J. McCarthy. He didn't point fingers because that's not Sam Darnold. Here's what he said instead.
I definitely haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot in the NFL. And I understand kind of the process and what it takes to, I don't understand necessarily what it takes to run an entire organization and run a team, but I understand how difficult it can be. When I sat back and really, digested, I guess, the information that they didn't want me back, that was, a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. But when I really stood back and looked at it from afar, I really understood the decision, and I really did. And I'm thankful that I landed in Seattle.
You can tell, in my opinion, when somebody has good parents as a kid because they become an accountable adult. Not dumping on people, not holding grudges, not being petty, not being vindictive. You can tell when somebody has good parents. They're an accountable adult, even in loss, even in defeat, even in humiliation, which Sam had multiple times in his career. Never bitter, never a victim, never points a finger, always absolutely accountable.
Yeah, I'm not going to place all of that on parenting. I agree with everything Colin said conceptually, but I'm not prepared to make it an automatic correlation, where if you don't exhibit certain behaviors, it somehow reflects poorly on your upbringing. Because I was thinking about how Baker Mayfield still carries all that bitterness toward the Cleveland Browns and continues making comments about it, even bringing up things with Stefanski. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know what any of that has to do with Baker's parents. I know absolutely nothing about how Baker was raised, so I'm not going to go there. That's not a connection I'm comfortable making. But I do find it interesting how the Minnesota Vikings fan base, and really anyone associated with that organization, is trying to rewrite the narrative. They're all out there saying, well, we offered Sam the same deal Seattle gave him. And it's like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Stop saying that. Stop repeating that nonsense over and over again. You could even hear it in how Sam responded when he addressed it. He basically said, they didn't want me back. And Sam's not lying. Sam's not exaggerating or juicing up the story for dramatic effect. He essentially said he had to process the reality that they didn't want him to return. That's what it was. The Minnesota Vikings legitimately said goodbye. Goodbye, farewell, we're moving in a different direction. So we can reframe it however we want. We can cook the books and revise history all day long. But at the core of it, they looked at him and said, nah, we drafted J.J. McCarthy. This is the path we've chosen. And yet, it's still kind of wild to process that Sam Darnold won the Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. Just thinking about how absolutely insane that season really was. It's remarkable. I still find it funny when I see that question at the bottom of the screen, asking whether Sam proved his doubters wrong with a Super Bowl victory. We've addressed that question so many times already, but I'm very confident in saying he did not. And not because I doubt Sam Darnold as a player. I'm a huge believer in Sam, and I feel like I constantly have to emphasize that whenever I say he didn't prove doubters wrong. Because anytime someone wants to label me a Sam doubter or a Sam hater, I just think, okay, you go ahead and do that. You go check the record on me. Look at my history. I've been consistent in my support. I just don't think anyone ever really proves anyone wrong these days. Seriously, I think people just continue to double down and triple down on their positions, no matter what. Think about how frequently people say, Lamar Jackson doesn't play well enough in the playoffs. He's not good in January. He's great in the regular season, but disappears when it matters most. Blah, blah, blah. Let's say he absolutely tears it up in the playoffs this coming year and wins the Super Bowl. People will say, well, that's great. He did it one year. Patrick Mahomes has done it multiple times. Even Jalen Hurts has been to multiple Super Bowls. Even Jalen Hurts played great in a Super Bowl. Tom Brady did it 10 times. On and on it goes. It's never actually enough for the doubters. Think about Patrick Mahomes, who has won multiple Super Bowls and been to a million of them. It's still not enough for some people. It's still, well, Tom Brady did more. You've got people like me saying Josh Allen is actually better. So the bar never stops moving. Anytime we have this type of conversation about doubters and proving people wrong, my first question is always, well, who exactly is having this conversation? Doubters in the media, doubters in fan bases, doubters on social media. That's why these discussions are always a bit flawed from my perspective. The goalposts are constantly shifting, and the criteria for what constitutes proving them wrong changes depending on who you're talking to. But I think we should elevate Sam's story more regularly. His personality, the discussions around him, his resilience, his entire journey. I find so much more connection and inspiration in that narrative than I ever would from a Patrick Mahomes or a Tom Brady or even a Josh Allen. The amount of failure Sam has experienced, the resilience he's had to summon just to keep going, that speaks to me so much more loudly. Being awesome with a team and still having it not be good enough, still having them not want you. Who else can identify with that feeling of rejection? How many times have you put out your best effort and it still seemingly wasn't good enough? You're just left thinking, man, that's a terrible feeling. When you do everything you can and you still seemingly fail or get rejected, there's this overwhelming sense of, what else could I possibly have done? It's different when you play poorly or don't perform up to standard. If you're in a relationship with someone and you recognize that you weren't the best version of yourself, you can understand why it didn't work. You have that closure. But if you feel like you did everything, you were the best person you could be, you gave it everything you had, and the relationship still doesn't work, you're left wondering how to make sense of that. How do you reconcile with that? It's so much harder to process. And Sam's ability to just keep pushing forward, to always say the right things, to never lash out or blame others, I just think it's really impressive and really admirable. And I think he fits Seattle so well. I really, truly believe that. I'm not bashing Baker Mayfield or anything like that, but I am very much aligned with Colin in that regard. I identify with and appreciate a Sam Darnold approach more than a Baker Mayfield approach. That's just who I am. That's who I try to be as a person. That's who I would want to play alongside. That's who I would want to hire as a coach. However you want to look at it through whatever lens, that approach just speaks to me more than anything else. And I want to be able to emphasize those things more and more because I just don't think they get elevated enough in the mainstream conversation. Put it this way, and I'll end here. I wholeheartedly believe that if Baker Mayfield had won the Super Bowl, it would be so much louder. The media coverage would be so much more intense. It would be absolutely everywhere. Baker at the parade, Baker making comments, Baker jawing and talking trash, doing all the things he does. It would be elevated to this massive cultural moment. There would be nothing but sound bites everywhere, probably t-shirts with little quotes on them, endless content cycling through every sports show and social media platform. Endless, endless, endless. And yet Sam Darnold does it a completely different way, a calmer way, a quieter way. And so it's just not as discussed. The volume doesn't get turned up the same way. So I want to do my part to change that. Put the good vibes only out there, man. Good vibes only. Let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get some discussions going. Let's get into some debates. But ultimately, let's just have some fun with it. And please do consider subscribing to the channel. We're building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love seeing you be a part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.